The movie begins with James Harper, a former Special Forces member, living a peaceful life with his wife Brienne and their 8-year-old son. Everything was going great until the fateful day when he seriously injured his knee on a mission in Afghanistan. And if you think his bad luck ended there, you're wrong. The rehab was long, but nothing compared to the shock he got when they called to tell him he was out of the army, for medical reasons, of course. And they didn't even give him a cent in compensation. All the money went straight to covering medical expenses. Basically, the army said, "Thanks for your service, but you're on your own now, champ." James, of course, was devastated, and when he got home, he dropped the bomb on poor Brienne, who, with more nerves of steel than most, just smiled and said, "It'll be fine, love. We'll figure something out." However, the peace was shattered again when Brienne revealed that James's best friend, Mason, also a former soldier, had taken his own life. Intense, right? Naturally, she was extremely worried that her husband would do the same, but he reassured her with a hug that he would never leave his family, especially in such a difficult time. The next day, at Mason's funeral, Mike, James's old superior, shows up. They catch up, and Mike, now in a new job that's very well paid, invites James to dinner with his family. Nothing like catching up with an old friend while watching their life skyrocket as yours crashes and burns. During dinner, Mike, now working for a private company with some risky business, drops a hint, "Why don't you come work with me? The pay is good." And, of course, James, with nothing much to do and buried in debt, grabs the opportunity like it's the last slice of pizza. The next day, they meet with the head of the organization, Rusty, who, surprise surprise, was also ex-military. Rusty explained that the job involved some dangerous missions, but with bills piling up, what's a few bullets and explosions? Interestingly, Rusty assured them they had government backing, so everything was almost legal. And, of course, the first mission was already on the table, a quick spy op in Berlin. James went home, told Brienne he had found a new job, and that he'd need to take a quick trip to Germany for 2 weeks. She held back her tears, gave that forced smile, and off he went to Berlin. There, he was met by Kadia, who immediately gave the order, "Keep an eye on a mad scientist, Salim, who was supposedly developing biological weapons to sell to terrorists." Nothing too different from what Tom Cruise does in Mission Impossible. With everything planned, James started his investigation, James Bond style, minus the gadgets, unfortunately. After a few days of spying on Salim, the final mission came, eliminate the scientist and steal his research. But, of course, nothing is simple when it involves biological weapons and German cops on patrol. Salim, for his part, begged to be spared, claiming his research would save millions of lives. Heard that one before? Yeah. James, not in the mood for philosophy, gave him the lethal injection. After that, as in any good action movie, the chaos began. The team got surrounded by the police, and Kadia and Bobby, James's colleagues, ended up dead. Mike got shot in the leg and, to make matters worse, they had to escape through the forest and dive into a river tunnel. A classic action scene, minus the glamour, just to survive the day. In one of the tensest moments, James had to perform a blood transfusion on Mike. Yes, this guy is the complete soldier. He kills, escapes, and does blood transfusions. But just when it seemed they might make it, James's knee, the one that got him discharged from the army, gave out again. Who knew something so small could complicate things so much? It's interesting to note that Chris Pine, the film's lead, also faces moral dilemmas throughout the story, and the movie raises an important issue about the inadequate care given to war veterans. Something I wouldn't do if I were James? Well, after learning that my best friend had taken his own life because of a similar situation, I might think twice before accepting any super risky job. And I'd definitely keep my family informed about the dangers. An interesting point here is how post-military life can be complicated, especially without proper support. But back to the movie, Mike, with his usual clumsy leadership style, suggested that James stay low with his injured leg while he went off to meet Rusty to deliver the research data. James, loyal and without much choice, followed the order and went to hide out at the Salvina Hotel. Of course, before leaving, Mike gave him a spy-worthy code, a passport and a note saying he'd be back in 6 hours. Spoiler, that didn't happen. James waited long enough to binge-watch Tom Cruise movies, but Mike never showed. Suspicious, he called Rusty, who revealed the chaos. The mission had been leaked, and the police were after them. And to make things worse, Mike was nowhere to be found, which could only mean one thing: game over for Mike, right? Or at least that's what Rusty implied. From that point on, James started getting a bad feeling about Rusty. Instead of following Rusty's plan, James decided to go rogue, and when he spotted the goons Rusty had sent, he realized he was in one of those action scenes where everyone gets betrayed. And guess what? Rusty was indeed behind the plot to kill him and take Mike out of the picture. James, ever the quick thinker, managed to escape, took down 2 of Rusty's men, and, in true protagonist style, sent a text from one of the dead men's phones to fool Rusty into thinking he was dead. After an escape worthy of the big screen, he remembered Salim and the research that was hidden in a bank vault. In a not-so-friendly visit to Salim's house, he convinced, or threatened, Salim's wife to help him recover the data. In the big reveal, Salim was just an innocent scientist trying to save the world from a deadly virus. Now with the data in hand, James flew back to the US, where he broke the news to Mike's wife that her husband was dead. But, plot twist, Mike was alive and well, which made James question if he was living in an action movie full of twists. Distrustful of everything and everyone, James decided to follow Mike and discovered that his friend had also been manipulated by Rusty. It was like both of them had been pawns in Rusty's game. Mike, who hadn't actually betrayed James, proposed one last suicide mission: take Rusty out once and for all to ensure their family's safety. And then, of course, comes the classic scene where they both storm Rusty's mansion, taking out his henchmen one by one, ending with the final shootout between Mike and Rusty. In the end, both fall, in a classic "there are no heroes in this story" ending. Now, something I definitely wouldn't do is follow Mike's idea to face Rusty head-on. Logic would say, why not take the data and leave the country instead of waging an armed war with a criminal? But James, being the hero he is, chose to confront everyone head-on. What would I do? I'd send an anonymous email to Interpol with the evidence and take a vacation in the Bahamas. Did you know that Chris Pine drew inspiration from real soldiers to bring his character to life? A pretty interesting tidbit. But if you were in the protagonist's shoes, how far would you go to protect your family? Let me know, and if you like this video, I've got 2 more here for you to check out. See you in the next one.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect.